Morning guys, welcome to another Biology with Miss Cherry. It's a short one again today. As I told you last lesson when we looked at competition, we're still looking at the biotic factors involved in population size today. So have a look at the pictures. What do they all show? Why are those behaviours important? So just have a think about them. Not too necessary to go through the answers in too much detail. And we'll start when you're ready. So this is a very much standalone lesson. It links together with the competition aspect, but is not really linked to anything else, apart from perhaps behaviours towards the end of module 4. But there's not too much detail today. I know you can't see how many slides there are, but there's only 22, and some of them are exam questions. So how are we going to define the keywords predator and prey? And what makes a good predator? What are the behaviours, the characteristics, the attributes that a good predator would have? So pause, define those words for me in your own words, and then play again when you're ready. So predators and prey are organisms that either feed on each other or that get eaten by another. Predators are the hunters and preys are the hunted. And predators are mostly adapted for capturing their prey. So they're going to be fast and effective hunters. They're going to be camouflaged. They're going to have parts of their bodies that are really good at maybe puncturing flesh, for example. And they're going to have methods of detecting the prey. So either echolocation, maybe they're going to have forward-facing eyes, maybe they're going to have really good hearing, for example, or smell. They're all going to be adapted to get the prey that they need in order to survive and reproduce. Now here we've got an example, and I want you to think about why this might not be actually representative. I've got a glass box the size of the room that you're in, and I put a rabbit and a fox in it. What's going to happen to the rabbit? What will happen to the fox, and why? And why is it not representative of what happens in nature? So think about those, pause for a second, and play again when you're ready. So in that glass box, the size of your room, depending on how big you are, depends on how much space there would be. But the fox is likely to hunt and kill the rabbit regardless of what happens, because the rabbit can't hide. It's a glass box, there's clear walls, it thinks that it can keep running, but it can't. It can't evade capture. However, in nature, there's always plenty more distance for the rabbit to escape into, as well as more places for them to hide, bushes, shrubs, maybe into a burrow. And when we consider populations, we've got to think about the background, the process of sampling. Because population data is very subject to bias, especially scientific bias, where the scientists, the investigators, pick areas because they think that there's going to be more organisms there and it's better to sample. So we've got to be very, very mindful of the circumstances surrounding population sampling. And this affects the reliability of the data. So when we're doing population studies based on predator-prey relationships, doing them in labs is not representative of nature. It's also quite difficult to rely on wild data because you can't count all individuals. And we're going to have a look on the next slide at how we can sample larger populations. In the next lesson, how we can sample these larger populations. But we can only estimate population size. And these sampling techniques, these estimations, are not obviously going to be very accurate because they're an estimate. You may as well just call them a guesstimate. They're just calculated arbitrary values based on a few individuals. And therefore, all the data that we receive on sample sizes has got to be treated with caution. You've always got to take everything with these sample sizes with a little pinch of salt. But here we can see a standard graph that shows predator and prey relationships. So in this case, lions are the predators and gazelles are the prey. But what do you notice about the relationship between the two individual populations and the numbers of predators and prey on the y-axis? So pause, have a think, look at the patterns, and play again when you are ready. Now, you should have been able to see that the population size of both populations are very closely linked. They follow a similar pattern of fluctuations over and over and over again. And as the population of, say, the gazelle changes, the lion population changes in a similar way shortly after. And there's that period of delay. And the period of delay is important, and we're going to have a look at this pattern in a second in a bit more detail. But we can see that as the gazelle increases in numbers after a few months, the lion populations are going to increase, and then the gazelles decline, and so do the lions shortly after. And that's a cyclical representation again, very similar to what we saw with the competition graphs where they rise and fall and rise and fall and rise and fall. This is very similar, but with two different populations now. So sketch the graph for me. You've got time across the bottom. It's a non-numerical axis, and then numbers in population up the Y. Draw the graphs, sketch them, make sure you've got your key, and explain what you think goes in at numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll go through those in a second. So spend about 5 minutes adding your thoughts, and then play again when you're ready to go through what actually happens. So for step 1, we have got an increase in the prey population. I should have highlighted that step 1 is pointing to the solid green line. And as those prey increase, there's going to be more food for the predators. So after a short delay, once the predators have been like, oh, there's more food there, the predators are also going to increase. And we can see that with this upshot that I've just put in an ugly green box. There's the delay because there has to be, obviously, recognising that food source has increased. But remember, we're talking about numbers in population. So reproduction has to be involved. And depending on the gestation period of the organisms in question, that could be a much closer pattern matching, or it could take a little bit longer if there's a long gestation period, i.e. the females are pregnant for a longer time. For step 2, though, once the predators start to increase, the prey is more likely to be eaten, and therefore we've got a rapid decline, almost when prey reaches its peak where the red dot is. There's a very quick decline in the prey population, and that's because the death rate, the rate at which these prey organisms are being eaten, is much higher than the birth rate of new prey. Because obviously as they're getting eaten, the parents are not going to maybe reproduce as much, they're just going to be focused on survival. Also, the offsprings might be killed a little bit more easily because they're likely to be weaker, and as a result, get a drop off in the prey populations, but also the predators, as you can see, which sort of links into step 3. And as we can see with step 3, the reduced prey population can no longer support the large predators, so the vast number of predators, which means that we end up with a significant amount of intra-specific competition between that predator population. So not only are they not going to have enough food, but they're going to be competing and fighting each other for the food that is available. And ultimately, that results in a decline, quite a significant decline now, in the predator population. And as you can see at the bottom, it's lower than it was even at the very beginning. So that predator population now is at its lowest value, which is obviously going to have a very nice effect on the concentration or the numbers of prey. So step 4 shows that pattern quite nicely, where the fewer predators there are, the more prey are able to survive and reproduce, and then we get a nice large number of prey, and means that the whole cycle can start again. So prey are at their highest, which means that the predators are able to eat them and increase the numbers of predators. Therefore, the prey will decline. Predators will decline subsequently because they haven't got enough food and they outcompete each other, or they compete for those food resources. And then the prey is going to increase, and so on and so on and so on. Now, it is important to remember that it's not just predator-prey relationships that cause these fluctuations. There's definitely other factors. So all of those abiotic factors that we looked at last time, but also things like disease and things like hunting and poaching and stuff like that as well are going to massively influence population size. But is it that simple? Is it really biologically as simple as predator eats prey, the prey populations decline, the predators die, and then more prey survive? How can we really know the effect of these on population size? And what you guys are going to do, you're going to read through the notes or the photos of page 215 to 216, make a few bullet points, and then complete the How Science Works Canadian lynx and snowshoe hare predator-prey relationship task. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long, but that's basically it in terms of content, so you're welcome to take as much time as you need on it. So pause now and play again when you're ready to continue. Now, as I said, this is a very, very short lesson, so we're going to have a look at a few exam questions just to round off. Organisms do not live in isolation, but interact with other organisms and with their physical environment. State the keywords used to describe I, the study of interactions between organisms and their environment, II, the physical or non-living factors in the environment, and III, the physical area that includes all the organisms present and their interactions with each other and with the physical environment. 3 minutes, you might want to use your books for this, use your notes, absolutely fine. Play again when you're ready to go through the answers. For B, state and describe 2 types of ecological interaction that can occur between different species in a habitat. As part of each description, you should name 2 species involved in your chosen example. So you're going to need to think back to other lessons that you've done now, other lessons that we've done recently about the interaction between different species. 6 marks, should take you about 8 minutes or so to think of the examples, maybe do a little bit more reading on them, and then play again when you're ready. Great tits, or Parus major, are birds that form male-female pairs. The male of each pair then establishes an area of territory which he defends against other great tits by singing and threat displays. The birds build nests within the territory in which the eggs are laid and young chicks are reared. Weasels are predators which eat eggs and young chicks. Figure 6.1 shows how the territory size of great tits affects the risk of nest predation by weasels. Describe the relationship shown in figure 6.1. So what is the link between territory size and a percentage of nests predated by weasels? Suggest and explain what effect weasels may have on the population size of the great tit. That is a suggest and explain. So what do you think and why? And this is our last question. So when you're ready to go through the answers, just carry on playing this video and they'll be on the next slide for you. So here we have got the first few questions. So ecology, abiotic and ecosystem should have been your keywords. The types of interactions, you could have had competition. You needed to give 2 species and then the description of interactions. So the example that they've given is red and grey squirrels competing for the same food is 3 marks. So something as simple as that, one single sentence contains all of the information you needed. You might have wanted to have something like predation or predator-prey interactions, which we've done today. You need to have, again, both species named and then the description of interactions. So the predator, the lion, grazes on or hunts the gazelle. There you've got predators and prey involved, species 1 and 2 named, and then how they interact. So one is hunted, the other is the hunter. For the next set of questions, though, there was a little bit more detail. So for 6AI, the larger the territory, the lower the predation, or the greater the distance between the neighbours, the lower the predation. And then the suggest and explain what effect weasels have on the great tit population is that the great tit numbers are going to rise and fall. And the weasels help to keep that rough number of great tits stable. And obviously, as you could see in the previous graph, so it said using figure 6.1, the closer together the neighbours are, or the closer together the nests are of the great tit, the more likely they are to be predated. So predation by weasels is density dependent. It depends on how many individuals of great tit there are to hunt. And the more there are, the more that they're going to be hunted. Now, hopefully you should have a score out of 12. If you didn't get any of those correct and you need a little bit more hands, just ask. That's absolutely fine. Otherwise, have a go at the exam questions on the sheet again. As you can see, there's not a great deal of stuff to do with these topics. We're moving on to sampling next, so hopefully there should be a bit more detail, but it's still very vague. They're much more application questions and bringing in lots of other modules. So have a go, and then we'll give you the mark scheme as well on OneNote, not Edmodo. So I hope you found that useful. I'm sorry it wasn't very exciting. It never is with ecosystems and ecology. But I'll see you again next time. Bye!